The Grand Chamber of the United Human Nations stood silent as the Star Path Codex began to unfold on the screen above the council tower, a three-dimensional web of glowing lines and stars spinning slowly in the air, showing every known planet, station and species that the Galactic Assembly had charted for thousands of years, and billions of humans around the world watched in awe, waiting to find Earth among the stars. But as the glowing map expanded, Earth's location was strangely blank, the Sol system left out as if it did not exist, and confusion quickly turned into whispers and disbelief, then into anger and panic when scientists confirmed that it wasn't a display error, that Earth had been completely excluded, not just from the core records, but from all assembly databases, as if humanity had never existed. And among the silence, Dr. Elena Marek, a well-respected xenohistorian, stared at her console in disbelief, fingers frozen above the keys, because she had just received a secure, untraceable message through a private data link. A message that simply read, "This wasn't an error. It was deliberate." And while politicians shouted and news anchors speculated wildly, Elena packed her small research bag and boarded a government shuttle to Lunar Archive Command, where she hoped to access ancient assembly data before it was censored or erased, since something deep inside her told her that the story behind Earth's disappearance was far older and far more dangerous than anyone suspected. And as she arrived at the moon base, her access credentials strangely worked. Faster than expected, doors opening for her without delay, guards nodding silently as if they had been told to let her through. And soon she stood alone in a cold room beneath layers of lunar soil, surrounded by old-style terminals and blinking consoles that buzzed with encrypted data feeds. And when she searched the central records for Earth, every result came back labeled "No record found." But when she tried entering ancient human names like Sol, Terra, or Homo sapiens, a few files blinked into existence, heavily corrupted and protected by outdated encryption. And one file showed a blurred image of an assembly star map, thousands of years old. And in that version, Earth was there, clearly marked. But the following entries showed it slowly being removed, layer by layer, until no trace remained. And one entry, a text log with part of its file name unreadable, stated Directive 0, status active. And though she had never heard of such a directive, the phrasing sounded familiar in a dark and quiet way, like something old governments would use to hide uncomfortable truths. And so she dug further, bypassing firewalls, cross-referencing with pre-assembly star surveys, and what she discovered chilled her. Earth had been officially discovered by the early assembly explorers nearly 7,000 years ago, but after their encounter, all related ships and personnel were rerouted, files locked, and the sector labeled uninhabitable despite evidence to the contrary. And the decision to remove Earth had not been public or even voted on, but carried out in secrecy, authorized by a body that didn't appear on any formal records. And the more she searched, the more the system pushed back, shutting down terminals one by one until only one screen remained, displaying a flickering image of an alien figure she didn't recognize, a gray-skinned being with deep-set eyes and ceremonial robes, who said through a static-filled voice, "Do not awaken what lies beneath your soil." And the feed cut off, leaving only the words, "Veshlan remembers," and the coordinates of Titan Station in Saturn's orbit. And though the room was now dark, Elena's heart raced with a mix of fear and determination, because someone out there knew the truth, someone who might help her understand why the galaxy had erased her planet from its maps. And she left the moon immediately, not even stopping to sleep, boarding a fast diplomatic craft and heading straight for Titan, knowing she was stepping into a mystery that could change how humanity saw itself. Because if the galaxy feared Earth so much that they erased it, then the question wasn't just why, it was what they were so afraid humans might become. The diplomatic ship slipped quietly into orbit around Titan, Saturn's frozen moon, where Titan's station hovered like a silver spider in the haze, and Dr. Elena Marek stood at the small window of her cabin, staring out with 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind, wondering who Veshalan was and why he had appeared on that old terminal deep beneath the lunar soil. And as her ship docked, the airlock hissed open, revealing a dim hallway lined with aged panels and flickering lights, unlike the usual brightness of newer assembly facilities, and the silence was heavy, as though the station itself had not spoken to anyone in years. And when she stepped out, there was no welcome, no greeting, only the low hum of machines and a guidance drone that hovered silently and led her deeper inside, past sealed doors and ancient signs written in a dozen alien languages, until finally the drone stopped before a massive black door that slid open slowly to reveal a circular chamber full of glowing memory crystals stacked like books in an old library. And in the center stood a tall figure cloaked in dark robes, skin like old metal, with long fingers curled behind his back and glowing blue eyes that blinked slowly as he turned to face her. And she knew without question that this was Veshalan, once a high-ranking archivist of the Galactic Assembly, and before she could speak, he said in a voice that echoed slightly, "I wondered how long it would take for your kind to return." And Elena stepped forward cautiously, her voice steady but curious, asking why Earth had been erased, why the Sol system was missing from the Starpath Codex, and what Directive Zero truly meant. And Veshalan gave a long sigh, walking slowly to one of the memory crystals and activating it, showing a spinning hologram of Earth as it had once appeared in assembly records thousands of years ago, vibrant and full of strange energy patterns that no one could properly explain. And he told her that long before the assembly rose, explorer ships from many species had visited Earth and watched its life grow too fast, its people change too quickly, adapting to threats and learning with terrifying speed, and one by one, those ships had either vanished or returned damaged, reporting confusion, hallucinations or dreams that were not their own. And assembly scientists at the time feared that humanity's minds were too open, too unpredictable, capable of warping technology and thought without even understanding it. And so a quiet decision was made before Earth even reached space to lock it out of the galactic records, to seal its name and remove its position from every star chart, calling it an unstable anomaly unfit for contact. And those who protested were silenced or sent to remote stations like this one, where Veshalan had remained for centuries, holding memories no one else was allowed to keep. And Elena listened in growing shock as he described the first contact ships that touched Earth's skies thousands of years ago, never seen by humans but deeply affected by them. And the beings aboard those ships experienced strange dreams, emotional storms, and even changes in their physical form, all without any sign that humans had done anything intentionally, as if Earth itself, or perhaps the human mind, triggered reactions in alien biology and technology that defied understanding. And because of this, a secret assembly protocol was written, Directive Zero, which ordered complete non-engagement with Earth and immediate deletion of its location from all future records. And Elena asked why no one had ever spoken of it, why no warnings were given, and Veshalan said that fear had become policy, and policy had become silence, and now the silence had lasted for generations, until someone in the assembly noticed Earth again, noticed its return to space, its sudden rise, its ships beginning to venture outward again, and that someone had sent the message that reached her, not to warn her off, but to guide her, because something had changed. Something in the pattern that now worried even the oldest members of the council. And Elena felt a chill as she realized that the assembly had not just feared Earth's danger, they had feared Earth's potential, and if even one human reached the wrong world or touched the wrong system, something ancient might wake again, something forgotten. And she asked Veshalan what that meant, what had been forgotten, and he walked to the far wall, opening a hidden compartment that held a crystal so old it was cracked with age. And when he placed it into the projector, it showed a vision of galaxies spinning backward, of stars burning in strange colors, and a brief image of what looked like humans, not modern ones, but something older, taller, their eyes like glowing orbs, walking freely among alien ruins that predated the assembly itself. And she whispered, "Are those our ancestors?" And Veshalan only said, "They were known by many names, but the stars feared them." And before she could ask more, the lights in the station flickered, a warning blared, and the comm systems picked up a strange pulse. Signal echoing through the Titan region, matching no known frequency, and Elena turned to the archivist in alarm. But he was already watching the ceiling, as if listening to something far away, and he said, "It's begun," and handed her a data rod, telling her to go, to return to Earth and find the old signal buried under the South Pacific, a place once known only to the oldest satellites, where something had been left behind long ago. A machine, a message, or perhaps a door. And as the drone returned to guide her back to her ship, Elena felt the weight of everything she had learned pressing down like gravity. But inside her chest, something else stirred. Not fear, but a strange excitement, as if a part of her had always known that Earth was different, and now the galaxy was beginning to remember it too. The sky above Earth was calm, but deep in the Pacific Ocean, hidden beneath layers of rock and time, a pulse had started, faint, strange, and forgotten by most of the world, but not by Dr. Elena Marik, who had returned from Titan with the data rod Veshalan had given her. And though few believed her story, she had enough proof to convince the Global Science Council to send a deep-sea exploration vessel called Serenity Echo to the coordinates buried in the data, a spot in the ocean with no islands nearby and a seafloor untouched by drilling or traffic. And as the vessel hovered above the site, its scanning equipment picked up something impossible, a perfect circular shape, 80 meters across, hidden under volcanic rock, giving off a low-frequency signal that repeated every 13 seconds, a pattern unlike anything seen before. And when Elena listened to the signal herself, she felt dizzy, as though the sound carried images, feelings, memories that didn't belong to her. And the crew, though skeptical, prepared the diving modules and sent down drones first, which showed a strange dome buried in the seafloor, made of a black material that did not match any metal known to science, smooth and unbroken, except for a single spiral symbol carved in the center. And when the signal reached its highest pitch, the symbol glowed faintly, like it was waking from sleep. And Elena knew they had to go down in person, despite the risk. And soon she was inside the diving pod with 2 engineers, descending into the cold, dark depths where only machines had gone before. Her breath slow, but her mind racing with the memory of Veshalan's words. "It's begun." And as they reached the structure, lights on their suits flickered, cameras stuttered, and time seemed to move strangely, as though minutes, stretched and compressed. But they reached the dome and landed gently on the ocean floor, and Elena stepped out, her boots sinking into soft silt, while the engineers scanned the dome's surface, confirming it was not just old. It was ancient, older than human civilization, maybe older than Earth's first cities. And when Elena touched the spiral symbol with her gloved hand, the dome responded, the lines glowing brighter, and the ground shook slightly as a seam appeared, opening slowly, like a giant eye, revealing a passage down into blackness. And despite the warnings from the ship above, Elena moved forward, knowing this was what she had come for. And inside the dome, there was no water, no pressure, only dry, silent corridors lit by a dull blue light that came from the walls themselves. And as they walked, they saw strange markings, symbols that looked like Earth alphabets twisted with alien curves, and machines that had no moving parts but seemed to breathe softly. And when they reached the heart of the dome, they found a chamber, with a tall object in the center, a pillar of glass-like stone, covered in glowing lines that pulsed with the same rhythm as the signal. And when Elena approached it, the signal grew louder in her mind, no longer just sound, but words, memories, and visions of the stars, as if something was trying to speak, directly into her thoughts. And then it did, a voice not from her ears but inside her mind, calm and vast, saying, "You have returned." And she staggered back, eyes wide, the engineers panicking, asking what was wrong, but she couldn't answer right away because the voice was still speaking, showing her visions of Earth long before recorded history, of tall beings walking beside glowing ships, of humans not as they are now, but as something more, creators, travelers, and guardians of something precious. And the voice explained that this dome was a memory beacon, a kind of message left for those who would one day wake again, a reminder of what humanity had once been before something caused them to fall, to forget, and begin again in darkness. And Elena asked the voice, why the galaxy feared Earth, and the answer came gently but clearly, because they saw what we became before. And they could not understand it, and she realized then that this was not the first time humans had reached the stars. It was the second, or perhaps the third, and that long ago, the original humans had not just explored the galaxy, but changed it, left their mark on worlds that now no longer remembered them. And the Assembly's fear came not from ignorance, but from memory, from old records of a time when Earth's people did not follow rules or limits, when they bent the laws of nature to build and protect. And something had ended that age, something no one would speak of, and as the voice faded, it left behind a final image, a star map with points marked far beyond Earth, places where more beacons were hidden, scattered across the galaxy, each one holding a part of the forgotten truth. And then the signal went silent. The lights dimmed, and the dome slowly closed again, sealing the chamber behind them as the ocean returned to stillness. And Elena rose to her feet, the weight of what she had learned sinking deep into her chest. Because this was no longer just a search for Earth's place on a map. It was a journey to reclaim everything humanity had once been. And as the pod rose back toward the surface, she knew the Assembly would not be pleased, that someone out there would try to stop her before she reached the next beacon. But now it was too late to hide the truth, because the signal had been heard again, and Earth was waking from its long silence. The days after the Pacific beacon awoke were strange and tense, as if the entire planet was holding its breath, and Dr. Elena Marek knew they had very little time before the Galactic Assembly noticed what had happened. But before any warning could arrive, the data left by the beacon began to unfold, and one map shone brighter than the others. It pointed to 3 specific star systems, each far apart but marked by strange energy traces that matched the signal's frequency. And the names written beside them were in old Earth language, mixed with something older. And though Elena could barely understand them, she felt drawn to one in particular, Valarian, a red world said to be touched by the flame of memory. And so she gathered a small crew, trusted allies from Earth's science fleet, and boarded the Starseeker Horizon, an experimental craft equipped with long-range fold drives, and launched into the unknown, leaving behind a world still confused by the discovery. And after 6 days in folded space, they arrived in the Valarian system, where a dying sun cast long shadows over a desert planet filled with sharp mountains and glowing sands. And as the ship descended, the sensors picked up ruins, not alien, but oddly familiar, made of stone, shaped like old Earth temples, worn down by centuries, but still standing strong against the wind. And as Elena stepped onto the surface, she felt a strange warmth in the air, not from the sun, but from something beneath the ground, pulsing gently like a heartbeat, and they walked among the ruins until they reached a great archway covered in carvings, and one engineer pointed out something that made them all stop. Among the symbols was the shape of a human handprint, clearly carved by someone who had known human form, and when Elena placed her hand over it, the stone glowed, and a soft light emerged, showing a path down into the earth, into what looked like a hidden chamber beneath the ruins. And as they followed it, the passage opened into a round room with walls covered in glowing lines. And in the center was a single tree made of crystal, its branches humming softly, and when Eleanor approached, the crystal lit up, and the room came alive with images, not recordings but living memories, showing Earth ships landing here long ago, guided by humans dressed in robes, welcomed by the native Valerians, who bowed not in fear but in deep respect, and then scenes of knowledge being shared, of crops growing in sand, of the tree itself being planted as a gift. And as the images faded, a voice echoed in the chamber. They came in peace, bearing light. And Eleanor realized this was no invasion, no conquest. It was a time when Earth had traveled the stars, not as rulers, but as healers, builders, teachers, and the voice continued, "When the flame of memory dies, so does the truth." And the tree pulsed again, releasing a small orb of light that floated toward her and sank into the device on her wrist, unlocking a second beacon's location, this time on a moon called Sereth, far on the edge of assembly space. And as they returned to the ship, one crew member warned of an incoming signal from an assembly patrol already entering the system, and they had only minutes before being detected, so Elena ordered a quick launch, and the Starseeker Horizon jumped just in time, vanishing before the patrol arrived, and for hours after the jump, the crew was silent, shaken by what they had seen and the closeness of capture. But Elena was deep in thought, because what they had found on Valerian changed everything. Earth hadn't just visited the galaxy, it had helped shape parts of it, and someone had tried very hard to make sure no one remembered. And when they reached Sereth, a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant, they found another mystery. No signs of buildings, no energy readings, only a strange ice formation at the North Pole that looked too perfect to be natural, and when they drilled into it, they found a smooth black structure hidden beneath, and inside, a chamber like the one in the Pacific Beacon. But this one was cold and still, as if it had been shut down long ago, and the air was heavy, and as Elena stepped inside, her breath caught, because the walls were covered in carvings showing humans and alien beings standing together, facing a dark storm in the sky, a shadow with many eyes. And though the carving was simple, it was terrifying, and the message beneath it read, "In the end, we hid ourselves to protect them." And suddenly the structure came alive, lights glowing blue, and the room filled with a low hum as another memory activated. This one showing Earth's last contact with this place, a warning given, a storm approaching, and humans sealing the chamber before vanishing into light. And again, the voice echoed soft but sad, "They forgot us to save themselves," and a second orb floated into Elena's hand, and this time she felt it, not just information, but emotion, a sorrow deep and old. And as they left the moon, a new destination appeared on their map, Luraxis, a world once filled with life but now marked as dead. And she realized that each world they visited had a piece of humanity's forgotten truth, not of war or power, but of responsibility, of gifts given and then hidden away. And as they traveled, she wondered how many more there were and what the assembly feared most, that Earth would remember, or that the galaxy would remember Earth. The world of Luraxis was broken and cold, its skies thick with grey clouds, and its soil dry and cracked like ancient skin. And as the Starseeker Horizon entered orbit, the scanners picked up only one thing, a signal, deep underground, pulsing faintly like a fading heartbeat, and Elena Marek stared at the screen in silence, knowing this was the final piece, the last world on the map left behind by the beacons, and she wondered what they would find on a planet the Galactic Assembly had labeled lifeless, because she no longer trusted their records. And as the crew descended in a lander, the ground below showed signs of massive destruction. Cities turned to dust, forests reduced to ash, and strange black marks along the mountains that looked like burns but had no heat signature. And when they landed near the signal, they found a massive crater, inside of which was a perfectly round doorway made of white stone, untouched by whatever disaster had ruined everything else. And as Elena approached it, the bracelet on her wrist, the one given by the beacon on Earth, began to glow, and the door opened silently, revealing stairs that spiraled deep into the dark. And without hesitation, Elena and two of her crewmates descended, lights flickering as they walked into a chamber made of smooth black glass, where a strange warmth filled the air, and at the center stood a tall, mirror-like structure. And when Elena stepped close, the surface shifted, not showing her reflection, but showing her as something else, taller, glowing, her skin marked with symbols, and her eyes shining like stars. And then the voice returned, older and clearer than before, saying, "Now you are ready to see." And images rushed into her mind, memories not from any beacon, but from within her own body, hidden deep inside her cells, in the very fabric of her being, like locked doors that were now swinging open. And she saw a time before history, when Earth was not just a planet, but a vault, a place designed to carry something powerful and rare, a species not born but chosen, made to carry the knowledge of many worlds and the strength to shape them. And humans were not just new to space, they were the second version, rebuilt after something terrible had come, something the galaxy could not defeat. And in a last effort, the original humans sealed away their memory, altered their own kind, and left the galaxy to forget them, because they knew the threat would return one day, and only those untouched by memory could rise again without fear. And now Elena understood. The reason Earth had been erased was not because of what humans had done, but because of what they were. And the Assembly had discovered it once, long ago, and chosen to hide it rather than face it. And as the mirror continued to glow, Eleanor looked at her hands, feeling something move beneath the skin. Not a creature, but knowledge, strength, a quiet fire awakening. And when she turned to the others, they too looked shaken, each of them seeing things they could not explain. And the voice whispered, "You are the key and the gate." And suddenly the chamber shook. Alarms rang on the ship above, and the pilot shouted through comms that assembly ships had entered orbit, demanding surrender and claiming jurisdiction. And Elena knew the time for hiding was over, because the memory had returned, not through machines or history, but through the people themselves. And if the assembly destroyed this place, it would not matter. The truth was already alive again, and she quickly transmitted the images, the voice, and the beacon locations to Earth, sending the full record across encrypted channels. And back home, millions would now see what had been hidden. And as the assembly ships began to descend, Elena stepped outside, standing in the crater as dust swirled around her boots, her heart calm, because she realized the most powerful truth was not in the stars or in alien ruins, but in the bodies and minds of her own kind, in their will to survive, to learn and to rise again. And as the sky filled with ships, she looked up and smiled, not in defiance, but in knowing that Earth was not forgotten anymore, and no matter what happened next, the silence had been broken, and the truth beneath their skin could never be erased again. The moment Elena sent the signal from Luraxis, the wave, of truth spread faster than anyone could stop it, across hidden networks, old relay stations, and long-abandoned satellites. The message unlocked ancient protocols buried deep in the systems of forgotten ships, derelict colonies, and sealed databanks on dozens of worlds. And while the assembly ships hovered over the crater like silent vultures, their own systems flickered as if awakening from a long sleep, because the truth was not just a story. It was code, energy, memory, written into the very bones of the galaxy. And now it had been spoken aloud, and the response came quickly, not from Earth but from the stars, as ancient AI cores long considered dead powered on again, whispering in voices made of light and numbers, repeating names, coordinates, and warnings that only made sense now and on Earth. As the broadcast reached the population, people felt strange shifts in their bodies. Memories they never lived, dreams filled with stars, symbols that appeared in reflections, and without knowing how, some began to speak words in languages not of Earth, words that opened things, healed wounds or shut down devices that had no off switch, and fear spread quickly among those who did not understand, but so did wonder. And as the assembly scrambled to contain the truth, more voices began to speak. Not from Earth, but from planets the assembly thought loyal, from beings who had lived in silence for ages, hiding their connection to the old humans. And now they came forward, revealing monuments, relics, and old stories passed down in whispers of the first ones who came from blue fire and shared the gift of creation before vanishing into myth. And suddenly, Earth was not a forgotten planet anymore. It was the key to understanding the beginning and possibly the end of everything. And the assembly was no longer united because within their ranks, many began to question the long-held lies, and some defected, sending aid to Earth, while others doubled down, calling for lockdowns, arrests, and quiet disappearances. But it was too late because the people remembered now, and memory could not be deleted once it became belief, and Elena, still on Luraxis, stood among the ruins with her team as more ships began to arrive, not to attack, but to join them, scientists, historians, and wanderers from across the stars, drawn by the signal and the truth behind it. And they called her not a hero, but a reminder, the one who helped the galaxy remember itself. And as more beacons were found, each offering pieces of forgotten knowledge about energy, biology, star building, even peacekeeping, the image of Earth changed in the minds of billions, from a primitive backwater to a world of deep and dangerous wisdom. And leaders from once hostile systems now asked to speak with humans, hoping to understand what might come next. Because the storm shone in the carvings, the thing with many eyes had not yet returned, but now they knew why the old humans had vanished, and why they had built beacons instead of armies, and why they had chosen to forget. And as Eleanor stood before a gathering of many species in the open plains of New Geneva, she spoke not with pride, but with quiet certainty, telling them Earth did not seek revenge or power, only to understand what had been taken and why, and that if the galaxy truly wished to survive the next cycle, they would have to face the truth together. And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy listened, and it began to remember not just Earth, but the shared story they had all been part of without knowing it. A story of stars and silence, of gifts and fear, and of one species that had been both student and teacher, forgotten, and now found. And as the sun rose over Earth's horizon, its light touched more than just a planet. It lit up a new chapter in the galaxy, one where the truth could no longer be buried, and where every voice, no matter how small, could become a beacon.